In 70 CE, the Roman destruction of the Temple left the Jewish world shattered. For the survivors in Jerusalem, the loss of their central sanctuary was a crisis of both faith and physical safety. At the same time, the small community of Torah-observant Jewish Christians was being flooded by Gentile believers. This demographic shift threatened to culturally dissolve the original community from within. Leadership fell to Simeon, son of Clopas, the second bishop of Jerusalem and a cousin of Jesus. He was responsible for maintaining the community's Jewish identity while managing a growing population that did not follow the Mosaic law. Simeon navigated this tension within the Bai of Eden, a rabbinic academy where Jewish and Nazarene scholars debated the status of their respective texts. It was a space of proximity and intellectual friction, where his traditional colleagues scrutinized every word he wrote. Simeon concluded that the community could not survive through integration. To preserve the Jewish remnant, he began constructing a theological boundary to separate his people from the Gentile converts. Simeon's solution was the composition of the original Evangelion. He framed the text specifically for Gentiles, creating a simplified ethical structure based on the Noahide laws, the standards Judaism historically applied to non-Jews. This framework directed Gentiles toward a distinct lifestyle, encouraging Sunday worship and removing kosher dietary laws. By creating different customs, Simeon ensured the two groups could no longer share a common table, insulating the Jewish remnant. The cost of this strategy was his reputation among his peers. Rabbis at the academy dismissed the Evangelion as Evangelion, the revelation of sin. Simeon did not defend himself, allowing his colleagues to view him as a heretic. At the climax of his text, Simeon included a specific detail. In the Emmaus Road narrative, he explicitly named his father, Cleopas, as one of the two witnesses who met the risen Jesus. According to the historiographic conventions of the time, naming one specific participant while leaving the other anonymous served as a source attribution. By identifying Cleopas, Simeon anchored the authority of the text directly to the family leadership of the Jerusalem church. Decades later, a wealthy shipowner named Marcion of Sinope arrived in Rome. He sought to establish a version of Christianity that rejected all ties to Judaism and the God of Israel. Marcion adopted Simeon's Evangelion as his foundational scripture, but the text presented a problem. It contained the name Cleopas, a detail tying the entire narrative to the Jewish family of Jesus. Marcion claimed his gospel was a spiritual revelation received by Paul, not a historical record. He could not maintain that claim as long as the text pointed toward the leadership of the Jerusalem Mother Church. To adapt the text for his anti-Jewish theology, Marcion moved to remove the specific associations that grounded the document in its original Jewish context. Marcion modified the manuscript physically. He began removing the passages that documented the movement's Jewish origin and its connections to the physical family of Jesus. He excised the entire 21-verse sequence of the Emmaus Road. By removing the appearance to Cleopas, he severed the link between the text and the Clopas family in Jerusalem. The modified text was presented without an author or a named source. Marcion referred to it simply as the Evangelion, stripping it of its historical attribution. As this redacted version spread among Gentile Christians, the memory of Simeon, son of Clopas, began to fade. Eventually, his identity was merged into the traditions of the more prominent apostle, Simon Peter. While the Christian record lost sight of him, the early rabbinic memory preserved a different perspective on Simeon's work. Medieval manuscripts of the Telia Yeshu tradition, cited by the commentator Rashi, explicitly identify Shimon Clopas as the person who composed the Evangelion and sent it to diaspora communities. These sources describe him as a tzaddik, a righteous man. They record that he acted for the good of Israel, intentionally moving Gentile believers away from Judaism to protect the surviving Jewish remnant from Roman persecution. In this early Jewish view, Simeon was not a convert or a heretic. He was an agent of communal preservation who sacrificed his own reputation to ensure the survival of his people. Over centuries of conflict and forced conversions, this sympathetic memory within the Jewish community shifted. The earlier Telia Yeshu accounts morphed into the hostile Toledot Yeshu folklore of the Middle Ages. The nuance of Simeon's mission was lost to the trauma of persecution. The figure once remembered as a protector was recast as a malicious deceiver. The man who had acted to save the Jewish community from assimilation was now cursed as one of its greatest enemies. This completed a dual erasure. The Christian world used his gospel while forgetting his name, and his own people survived because of his work while rejecting his memory. Simeon, son of Clopas, remained hidden in the history of both faiths, a man who saved his community through a mission that eventually made him a stranger to them.